Hey folks, it's Sam. I'm live as I've ever been. I'm living. Are you? And we're talking about the new moon in Cancer in Pushya Nakshatra that's happening on July 19th. I think it's the 19th. Let me pull this up. Is it 19th or 20th? Let me do this here. And it's in the nakshatra of Pushya. What we got here? And I know that the 19th is the Amavasya, which is the new moon day, but I have to see exactly the hour here of when we have the new moon. Oh, we're getting into the 20th here. Oh, yeah. So it's actually the 20th. Sorry. See that? I was so prepared. It's actually the 20th by the time we actually have the Amavasya. So depending on where you are, it will happen probably on the 20th. So excuse me there. So this new moon in Cancer, as you see, I'm on cosmic time, not calendar time. So that's my excuse, and I'm sticking with it. Cosmic time is the time that is aligned with the sun and moon and cycles. I hardly know what calendar day it is, even though I sound very much like I'm on top of all the details. The mundane world frightens and confuses me. Your world frightens and confuses me. Did you ever see the Saturday Night Live skit, Frozen Caveman Lawyer? It's a funny skit. You can find archives of it on YouTube. The late Phil Hartman. I'm just a simple caveman. Your world frightens and confuses me. So the world doesn't frighten and confuse me too much, but half the time I got to be like, what's that calendar date again? That Gregorian calendar date that has no bearing or resemblance to the cosmic calendar. And there you have it. So what this cosmic calendar shows is that it's the cycle of Cancer. The sun and moon are coming together in 4 degrees of Cancer, which is Pushya Nakshatra. So these are the real cycles of life, right? And this is why the Indian calendar is actually based on these new moons and full moons and these lunar days, what are called these tithis. And there are 12 of these tithis, 12 of these soli lunar cycles each year, approximately. And that's what that's the real cosmic time. That's the real time that's unfolding. The Gregorian calendar and other calendars are just solar based. They just have to do with the earth going around the sun. That's why we always know, for example, the first day of spring is going to be likely March 21st, maybe very early March 22nd, because it has to do with the earth in its orbit around the sun, right? It doesn't bring into account the sun and the moon, which is what I'm talking about. So these soli lunar cycles bring the sun, moon, and earth into focus. And so when we have these new moons, it's the beginning of a new cycle. Now we're finishing up the Gemini cycle, which started on the last eclipse, the last that eclipse that we had on the solstice. We had a solar eclipse on the summer solstice on June 21st, I believe, was the calendar date. And that started that cycle of Gemini. Then 2 weeks later, we had the lunar eclipse. So now we're here. Now we have this, this cycle of Cancer is very much about going into the heart, really connecting to the heart, connecting to that place of stillness that's deeper than just all of the emotions bubbling on the surface. That emotions bubbling on the surface, has to do with that surface quality of Cancer and that surface nature of the mind and emotions. You have a bunch of feelings that keep you in sync with those people and situations that you're living in real time. So you want to understand the emotions this way. The emotions are your feelings interacting with the moment, right? So the true sign of emotion, of pure emotion, is the sign of Cancer, which is literally ruled by the moon. And it's that quality of motherhood. And what is a mother doing? What does a mother do? Well, she's taking care of every changing need of her kids, or one kid. And her emotions have to be tuned to the changing moment. So that's what emotions are. Emotions keep us sensitive to the situations and primarily the people around us, so we can adjust and adapt and take care of them. And again, this is the mother's first job, right? Is to not just say, well, this is how I feel. My peace is more important than your needs in the moment. Now, that's a deeper level of Cancer, and it's not, we don't need to be one or the other. And in fact, if the mother doesn't have a good grasp of her own, sense of pure love and a deep channel to her transcendent selfless love, then all of that emotion on the surface will wear her out, drain her, and eventually lead to a lot of frustration. This is why we have to sort of do it all. With each of the planets and the signs and whatnot, we're experiencing a range of potential with their energy. So with Cancer and with its ruler, the moon, that dynamic range of potentiality is from the surface emotion, which is literally like the surface of the world, and our interactions with others and situations on the surface, like externally, to how we experience it ourselves as an emotional response, to something that's much deeper and transcendent and more related to things like bhakti and devotion and selfless love. So this is going to be the sort of evolutionary process that we're going through the next 30 days, starting on July the 20th. You see there, scrolling beneath down there, I have a thing that's scrolling. It's about a nakshatras course that I'm teaching this weekend. In fact, it's the last few hours to actually register for it if you were thinking about doing it. There's almost 200 people registered for it already, but I thought I'd put it up there in case anybody was still wondering about it. Nakshatras8020.com. It's going to be a great weekend course. I thought I'd put that little ticker up there in case anyone was wondering. And again, you could still get in it for this weekend. After tonight at 8 o'clock Pacific time, you won't be able to get into it at all for the next few weeks, but then it'll be full price. But that's going to be a great course where you learn about the nakshatras and the 20% of stuff that gives you 80% of the results. That's what the 80-20 is all about. And this 80-20 principle is all pervasive. It's called the Pareto principle. And I've been doing some courses on this lately, and people have really loved it because it really helps you drill down into the most important structures that move the needle the most. People will learn how to actually do nakshatra readings, like a sort of hero's journey reading. You'll also learn each nakshatra in great depth, how it's related to the Rashi that it's in front of, that it's behind, and many other things. So check that out. Now, I also talk about that because this new moon is happening in the nakshatra of Pushya, which is the section of Cancer literally related to the breasts. Now, again, I say this all the time, but I'm going to keep saying it. In all the Vedic astrology texts, the Rashis and the nakshatras are totally aligned. Every Vedic astrology text says Ashwini and Aries. Starts with the nakshatras all the way back in the Rig Veda. Everything is pinned to this sidereal nakshatra scheme. And then the Rashis were laid on top, right? Very clear. So when you do that, then by the time you reach this section of the sky over here, where we're having this new moon, by the time you reach this point, you're in the nakshatra of Pushya, and the sign is Cancer. Now, again, you want to understand something, that if you're not using this integrated zodiac, which is, again, in every Vedic astrology text, most of Pushya, which has to do with the breasts, and nurturing and selfless love, which of course is totally a Cancerian theme. Most of that would be in Leo. So again, this is just where you can see it just doesn't work, right? So this is that section of Cancer that's totally related to, again, the breasts, the selfless love, the nurturing. And Pushya is ruled by the god called Brihaspati, who is the Vedic priest. And even the story in Pushya is, obviously, it's totally a story of love and romance, but ultimately it's about selfless love. Hang on one second. Because the story is that the god Brihaspati was married to Tara, or I'm sorry, Tara was, yeah. So the Vedic priest Brihaspati was married to Tara, who was the most beautiful woman in the universe, right? And Chandra, the moon god, he's a moon god. All the planets are masculine, even the female planets. That means that they activate those qualities. So even Venus, who is called Shukracharya, was a masculine entity, and Chandra was also a masculine entity. So Chandra, the moon god, as he was going around the zodiac, he fell in love with Tara, who was the most beautiful of the wives, but she was the wife of Brihaspati, who was the old priest. He's a priest. You think of someone like, a pope or a priest. So the priest, he was able to score the hot babe. He got his hot babe wife, but he's an old priest. And Chandra, he's the moon, he's Mr. Romance, Mr. Romantic, he's got that, the moonbeams coming out of his eyes. He's a pretty hot, charismatic guy. So Tara fell in love with Chandra. Chandra fell in love with Tara, and they ran off together. And they had a baby. They had a child, and the child was Buddha, which is also Lord Mercury. It's also Mercury. So Mercury is actually the child, or I should say Buddha is the child of the moon and Jupiter's wife. Now, there's a whole symbolism in that. But underneath it all, what happened is there was a scandal because they didn't know whether or not Tara's baby belonged to Brihaspati or Chandra. Because what happened is after a while, Chandra took Tara away, and then Brihaspati was like, bring my wife back. And Chandra was like, no. And the whole universe was about to kind of blow up. And finally, they convinced Chandra to bring Tara back. But of course, now she's pregnant. They didn't know who she was pregnant with. Was it Brihaspati or Chandra's child? So what happened is when the child was born, it wound up being Chandra's, but Brihaspati was so gracious that he agreed to raise the child and love the child, and the child was so precocious and joyful and beautiful that Brihaspati loved the child as his own, which also gives his qualities of Mercury, that he's very charming and funny and easy to love and care for. But in many ways, this story of Pushya, which literally is about nourishment, nurturing, selfless love, and the symbol is the udders of a cow. It's literally breasts. Again, you can see the connection to the zodiac. Cancer is the sign of motherhood, and Pushya is literally breasts, where you nurture and suckle. Of course, that's the sign of Cancer. But it's also that story is a symbol of selfless love more than anything. Because what happens is there's this whole backstory, this whole big drama about the romance, the fall in love, the scandal, the curse, because there was a curse put on Chandra, and this whole kind of thing happened. All this big scandal happened, but ultimately, after all of that drama, there was a child that was born, and the child needs to be raised, and the child needs to be loved. And in spite of whatever the heck all that was, we have a child, we have life, We have a beautiful being, and now we need to take care of that being and love that being selflessly. So this is the nature of Pushya. And we want to raise that child with good values and, again, in accordance with higher principles and higher wisdom. This is the nature of Brihaspati, the ruler. He's the priest of the gods. Now, again, this is also really important because, again, when you look at the integral zodiac this way, this really shows you something about the sign of Cancer. Again, Cancer is made up of 3 nakshatras. Again, this is what I'm going to be talking about during the weekend course. The first one is Punarvasu. The first 3 degrees is from the end of Gemini, first 3 degrees of Cancer. And by the way, the deity there is Aditi, who is the mother of the Adityas. That's the first section of Cancer. The middle section is Pushya, and the last section is Aslesha. And so this section of Cancer is that section of, again, selfless love and nurturing, but it also shows that this quality of Cancer that needs to have a sort of traditional, even conservative, devotional, stable life. And when Cancer has this stable, traditional life of whether even it's children, but just a family, nurturing, again, stability, even a sort of somewhat conservative view about love and, commitment, that's their true nature of the sign Cancer. One of the ways that Cancer people, if someone has like a Cancer ascendant or something like that, one of the biggest ways they can get themselves into trouble is by being like, let's say dating a lot, or even like having a lot of sex, or being like loose and too on the surface. This comes back to the gunas, by the way. Cancer isn't Gemini or Libra, or, where they like to have fun, or maybe like to date a lot, or like to do all this. No, Cancer is in some ways very proper. It's sattvic. It's looking for the higher meaning. It's trying to find love and devotion in things. This is why a child shows up, and what comes out? Devotion. We're devoted to the child naturally. Even if we hardly have any capacity for devotion, the appearance of a child will automatically nail you into that function of life relative to how much capacity you have. You might not have much, but if a child shows up and you have to take care of it, usually a person will rise to whatever their capability is. And if they're not able to meet that level of devotion, it will nag at them because the child is an innocent being that needs love. So the whole backstory of Brihaspati and his wife Tara and running away with the moon and this whole kind of scandalous thing that surrounded the birth of the child is really just a way to say life is messy, it's crazy, whatever got you there. Once the child shows up, it's selfless love, nurturing, and that's what will kick in. So again, this is really how the nakshatras hold a deeper key to each one of the signs, each one of the rashis. And again, the last section of Cancer is Aslesha, which is a whole different quality. Aslesha is actually the embracer or the entwiner, and it shows this kind of embracing, like a mother loves to hug and embrace, but sometimes they can hug so much that they strangle you to death, right? They need to also learn how to, there used to be a song called Hold On Loosely, but Don't Let Go, right? It was Hang On Loosely, 38 Special, I think. If you cling too tightly, you're going to lose it. Like you can't strangle someone with your love. Cancer has to be careful of that sort of clinginess. That's shown more by the Aslesha Nakshatra part. So again, once you understand these qualities of Rashi Nakshatra connections, it's obvious that this is the way the zodiac is laid out. So again, this is what we're going to do in that Nakshatras course. If you haven't signed up for it yet, go ahead and do it. It's not that much. It's not even $50 for, more than 10 hours of classes and whatnot. So, but anyway, this new moon is in Aslesha. So is in Pushya. So it's going to be a great time to spend it's a 30-day cycle. It's from new moon to the next new moon, which is going to be probably in Magha in 30 days. In a Leo. And so it shows where for this next 30 days, it's really a time to connect to the heart, to connect with your family, however you define your family. maybe somebody like both of my parents are dead. I have a sister, and I have other family that I've created through my school and my friends and my close, loved ones. Reconnect with them. We're having intense times right now, of course, with on many different levels, so many cultural changes and upheavals going on that, a sense of family and a sense of commitment and sort of purity of heart is really needed. It's really needed. And that purity of heart is that higher principle of Cancer. And we really see it in this nakshatra of Pushya, the Vedic priest who loves selflessly, whether it was his kid or not, even though it came from this scandal or whatever. There's a child here. We need to take care of the child and rise to the highest. And that's a metaphor, obviously, for our entire existence. If we all treated each other like we were all children of God, which we are, we're all children of something higher. We're all brothers and sisters. And, even your child in this lifetime was maybe your parent in your previous lifetime. We're morphing into different stages of identity and evolution in ways we just don't understand. And, we're so fired up now around so many different issues and so much clamoring and noise around what we think is right or whatever it is. We need to come back to something that's more transcendent. And really everything that's transcendent, or love is the most transcendent force there is. Love will push everything else out of the way. It doesn't matter. When there's love, there's no struggle, there's no upset. Pure love, not the thing we usually do. Again, this is another important lesson of Cancer, is it's about that purity of the heart, not that passionate love, quote, where that sort of romantic love where I get this and you get that. There's nothing wrong with that. That's a whole thing as well. That's more related to Venus, where we learn how to play fair and we learn how to measure things and have agreements and honor boundaries and compromise. That's a whole other thing. The pure love of Cancer, that purity of the heart, is something much more primitive, primal, foundational, and certain. One of the biggest things right now is we're living in times that have so much uncertainty. So much uncertainty. We're not certain of anything hardly, right? We don't know what's coming next. But I bet you're certain of a few things. I bet if you have kids, I bet you're certain that you love them and do anything for them. I bet you're certain of those things that you love. And I don't mean that you love because you're afraid of losing it, because you might not, I love my job or whatever. We all love that thing, but that's not really the same kind of love, unless your work is related to something that's loving and dharmic and whatnot. But think of the power of love and the power of certainty. And the certainty of the heart, the certainty of devotion. Like, I know no matter what happens, I'm going to keep loving my guru. And I'm going to keep loving my friends. I'm going to keep loving my students. I'm going to keep loving my work. The world can, whatever the world does, it's going to do it. I can't control it. I can do my best to maybe try to influence it in however way I might think, whatever is going on. But none of that's going to change that nature of my spirit that is still pure love. Now is the time to connect what's pure about your life. What's pure? You can tell if it's pure because there's love there. Pure love, not drama. And again, this is why the story, this is one of the most profound stories in the zodiac. One of the things I'm doing in the Nakshatra weekend is bringing out a lot of these stories. Some of them have really profound stories, that are quite involved, like this one. Brihaspati is involved in this complicated story. I told it really quickly, but it's a whole thing of, deceit and scandal and pregnancy and, it's like complicated. Some of them are more simple. But this complicated story is to really illustrate, like I said, at the end of all of that, there's a simple result. There's a baby here and we love it, and that's going to nail us into reality. And it's that part of Cancer that can just be all about the emotions. Emotions are changing in the midst of all the subtleties of the world we live in now. I started saying this, that Cancer was the sign of our emotions in the moment, our feelings in the moment. And these moments now, they're all over the place. There's all kinds of complicated things. But underneath it all, the thing that you love, the thing that you've given birth to, the thing that's beautiful beyond all of that is still that conduit, that direct connection to your true nature as spirit, to your true nature as a divine transcendent being. There's only one way to get there, really, and it's through the heart. Wish there was another way. Boy, do I wish there was another way. But it's not. The only way to get from this limited world of stress and anxiety to that transcendent soul that's beyond is through the heart. We try every other way, but that's the only way. And so this next 30 days is really a time to feel that transcendent, divine, devotional love in your heart. That's your true nature. That brings all, this certainty, this truth, this devotion. And again, that's ultimately the real transcendent state of feeling is devotion rather than emotion. Again, just like the mother is devoted to the child, the devotee is devoted to the guru. What are you devoted to? What are you devoted to that's bigger than anything that could undermine it or try to undermine it? Because, the thing is that only that which, nothing can be taken from you that is not real. The only things that can be taken are things that are unreal. You can know if something is unreal because it's something that is subject to change. And if it's subject to change, it's not real. This is a deep yoga principle. And so one thing that can never be taken is your devotion. No matter what happens externally. And again, we see this in stories of Jesus on the cross is a perfect example of this. The moment of redemption of Jesus where he's crucified. No matter what they did, they couldn't take from him his devotion to God. As the parable goes, tortured or whatever was going on, he still stayed devoted. His sovereign nature was pure love. So again, this is a very, very deep medicine for this time, and we need it. The world needs it. We need to heal, and we need to be passionate. We need to be compassionate with each other as well, as much as possible. So these statements that I'm making are, hopefully, somewhat resonant with where you sense things are going. And I've sensed in the last few days, a couple of weeks ago, or even, the last month, we've been in it. This has been a long eclipse cycle because first we had a lunar eclipse. We had two lunar eclipses, two penumbral lunar eclipses, sandwiching one really fierce solar eclipse. So when you get those two wide lunar eclipses, it means that the solar eclipse is also going to be very powerful, which means very direct. So, we had that standoff with China and India, and, there was all this tension. And, a couple of weeks before that, there was a lot of emotion coming up when we had an eclipse, when we had a solar eclipse in Scorpio, then lunar eclipse in Scorpio, lunar eclipse in Sagittarius. So all that eclipse intensity of the last month and a half or almost 2 months, feeling like it, is starting to release a little bit. And I've definitely sensed it in the last few days where some of the intensity has started to calm down a little bit. looking online and seeing the way people respond to things, we're starting, because what happens is this moon is waning as we go and see. Again, I'm recording this now. Whoops, let me put this on the day. So I'm recording this now on the 16th. So you see the moon is here. It's joined Venus right now on the 16th. But if we go forward, the moon is now waning. The moon is waning. It's getting darker and darker and darker and darker. And as the moon wanes, all of our like intense, passionate, like, when the moon is bright, we're like filled with this emotion about things. As the moon starts getting darker and darker, all of our emotional charge around whatever it is we're all charged up at that time, based on the current lunation cycle, starts to wane as well. So we're seeing it starting to wane now, And this is why when we get to the new moon, there's an emptying and things have been emptied out. So again, this is why, on the 19th and the 20th, it's like our mind, it's like emptied again. So again, this is the way these cycles play out. This is the way these soli lunar cycles play out. It's an emptying and a start of a new cycle. Again, the last one was in Gemini. We were emptied out right before it, and then the Gemini started, and then we get filled with that. Halfway in the Gemini cycle is Sagittarius, which is opposite. That's the full moon. Then it empties, gets ready for the next one. So now we're at that next one where we're almost emptied out of the Gemini, where our ideas and all of our Gemini, like, oh, this is the right thing, and all of our Gemini gathering is starting to kind of empty out a little bit. We're starting to feel that empty out a little bit, and the kind of exhaustion of it as well, because it was also an eclipse where we're like, a Gemini eclipse for a couple weeks. We've just been kind of spinning, right? And now we're kind of emptying out of that, and we're kind of moving away from all of the stuff. And this is why Cancer comes after Gemini. Gemini is like the young child who is filled with a lot of ideas. Oh, maybe this, maybe that. And then after that stage of life, then we become the sort of Cancer, which is that very sensitive age. You remember when you became really sensitive, like, maybe, 10, 11, 12 years old, when you first started to like really become aware of yourself, like when a young girl becomes like menstrual or starts to really notice boys. And the same thing happens with boys. They start to like notice, we start to kind of notice the opposite sex. And then we have that kind of awkward teenager sensitivity where we're just a bunch of sensitivity. That's kind of the Cancer stage. And there's a very beautiful, innocent sweetness about that, especially once we're older. But that's the kind of mentality. That's like the field of consciousness that we're opening up now with this, as we're emptying out of the Gemini intensity. We're opening up the prospect of a deeper connection to our mental innocence, our openness. Remember that innocent, trusting person that's inside of you. It doesn't matter how old you are. There's a part of you that is completely unstained, untouched, unscathed, totally pure, 100% pure of all of it. Where there's no guilt, there's nothing where you shouldn't have any of that. You're innocent of all of it because you're just trying your best. Doesn't matter your age. That's your nature. Your nature is underneath it all. The soul is not touched by what happens here on earth. Like it says in the Bhagavad Gita, just like we take off our clothes at the end of a life and put on clothes at the beginning of a new life, the soul is the imperishable soul is beyond all of this. We just forget it once we come into form and start doing all of this stuff. Then we lose ourselves in it and forget, wait a minute, underneath it all, there's something that is innocent of everything. Try to feel that again. It hasn't gone anywhere. It's still there. It really is. And you can do things to try to reawaken it. I do quite a lot. these days. With me, a lot of it can revolve around music or things. This is why, again, the sign of Cancer and also the moon itself is very sentimental. Now, again, that can be a kind of trap because then we're just kind of conjuring up sentimental emotions and whatnot. But to evoke that innocent mind again, that innocent nature, especially as a beginning, not as an end, not to just sort of relive some nostalgia, but especially as a aid, let's say maybe to meditation or something that really connects you with something innocent and pure. And even ways to connect to the innocence and purity of your childhood when there was just pure innocent love for your parents before all the weird stuff happened. Do you remember that? Do you have a way to conjure that up? Do you have a way to feel that again? Do you have a way to have that be a blessing, to have that memory be a blessing, not something painful? Because if you don't, then it's going to be hard, because then there will be fear when you try to meditate. You won't be able to meditate, especially if you're still angry or fearful of what was done to you as a child or whatever all this is. You know, Cancer, the sign, is all of this stuff. Is ruled by the moon. If you're still hurt and wounded by all of that still, and you're still carrying it around and everything is like still, again, there's no judgment, but those things will hold you up. If there's a way that you can try to feel the blessing of when you were a child before all of that, it might be painful, but it's there. It's very healing to be able to do that. And something maybe to think about, because again, this is the next cycle where we're going to be, if we can do that, there's a direct channel right to that source of innocence and love in our heart. So again, these are related to Pushya Nakshatra and the sign of Cancer. Now, you know, a few other things. Venus is still powerful up here in Taurus, in her own sign. So there's a lot of joy and beauty and creativity and all of those things naturally happening now. And I definitely feel this. I definitely feel this real connection that people are making, where, especially in the spirit of friendship and really aligning around, you know, again, different forms of beauty and creativity and whatnot. This strong Venus and Taurus is really helping us to feel nurtured and cared for and protected. By the way, I didn't say it explicitly. I probably should have, but you know, of course, the moon is the ruler of Cancer. I did say it, but having this new moon in the sign of Cancer, where it's the ruler, you know, makes this whole cycle one where there's enormous clarity possible. It's not just something to like, you know, oh, try this. No, the fact that the new moon is in Cancer it's in that environment where this is the power now. This is, if you're able to really feel that deeper transcendent love and devotion, now is the time to really get the message of what that is and tap into something that is transcendent, that transcendent love. And, you know, many people never experience it. They don't feel it at all. Their entire mind and emotional state is some kind of emotion. It's always some kind of drama going on, some kind of emotion and feeling, an incomplete moment and insecurity and feeling strange and feeling weird and not connecting to something deeper. Again, the way to do that is through meditation, spiritual practice, especially if you have a guru and you have practices that are related to, again, devotion and love and purity of heart, then those practices are just really powerful right now. So everyone who has a guru and does regular meditations and really connected to bhakti and devotion, this is a great month. So again, because it's in Cancer, you know, the new moon is in Cancer and the moon is the ruler, that's very powerful. But again, Venus in Taurus really helps to ground those practices in something that can bring a lot of joy and contentment with our friends and with the things we have. Mercury is also still in Gemini, and he's going to be there for, I think, into August, right? No, come on, I did it again. I think it's into early August. Yeah, August 1st. So again, Mercury's powerful in Gemini, so it's a great time to really think your way through these things, understand, comprehend, communicate. Mercury's no longer retrograde. He's moving forward. So again, that's really good for expressing yourself, working through emotional difficulty, by talking about things, processing. Maybe if you've gotten into some arguments or disagreements with people, working them out, listening to others. We also have powerful Jupiter in Sagittarius. Again, a lot of planets in their own signs now. Venus, Mercury, Jupiter, and Saturn are all in their own signs. So a lot of power right now. World is doing what it's doing, but the world doing what it's doing is showing us the truth, revealing, and it's very empowering now for us to see it and to learn from what's happening. So again, this Mercury gives us a lot of intelligence and discrimination. Jupiter gives us a lot of hope to again, find the higher teachings, find the higher meaning, behind all of these strange things that are happening. All of our beliefs about the world are changing in ways that is even surprising to us. Again, we just went through this whole eclipse, and I talked about that quite a lot, so I'm not going to get into that so much right now. Go back and watch the updates that I did on the eclipses and the Gemini, Sagittarius, and all of that. Again, so all of that is still going on. That's a backdrop, of course, to what's been activated and opened up in the world. But again, now we're kind of moving out of that eclipse vortex into something that's trying to be more integrative, integrating that into the heart. So hopefully we take these lessons, these Jupiterian lessons of what's most inspiring, and really seeing the truth of what's coming out beyond all of our beliefs and all of our projections. So many projections before this eclipse cycle. Well, how does it look now? With Mercury in Gemini, Jupiter in Sagittarius, and Saturn in Capricorn, showing those hard facts. The cold, hard facts. What are we willing to commit to? Is also there. And we also have Mars up here in, Mars is going to be in Pisces and Aries for the rest of the year and even into early next year. So Mars in Pisces is really bringing out this spiritual warrior energy as well. So there's a lot of emotional courage helping us during this Cancer cycle. Because again, this Cancer is bringing up a lot of feeling, a lot of emotion that we could get kind of stuck on. But this Mars up here in Pisces is really showing how, Mars is literally the warrior, and it's in Pisces, which is about that transcendent nature and being disciplined, not just wanting to sort of check out and sort of tune out. Like I said earlier about, I tend to go back and, music really connects me to a lot of things. When I want to feel that love I had for my mother or my father, I can go back and listen to music back when I was 4 or 5 years old. I can't how I remember anything, but I remember those songs. Those songs take me right to that place of where my mind and heart were just still so innocent, right? And it still is. That's for me at least, that's always been the power of music, is that it literally transcends time and space. So when I hear these songs that I used to hear when I was a kid, it takes me back to that innocent place. Maybe for you, it's something different. Some people get a lot off on smell. Like, I don't have a good sense of smell, so I don't smell. I don't remember anything I've smelled. So, but I say this because instead of just being emotional and sentimental, again, which can be a kind of, and it can be a little indulgent, it's good to maybe find a way to connect. But again, with this Mars up here in Pisces, what could be a kind of sentimental indulgence becomes very deep and metaphysical and cosmic. Because Mars is very disciplined, and Mars is on the scene right now in Pisces. He's ready to really fight for that transcendent soul nature and bring that about. So this is where we're at right now. And, I hope that things are going well for you in your life. It's, we're definitely going through some intense times in the world. We all need to, pull together and be kind and loving as much as we can and all that stuff. I'm not no great guru around all this stuff, but, we all have to do our best. Again, underneath it all, I'm doing my best to work on patience, work on being open, reconnect with, people that I care about. And this next 30 days with this Cancer cycle is a great time to also take it even deeper into something that's very devotional and transcendent. And so I see some good comments here, and I think I'm just going to leave it at that, and I'm going to just say goodbye, and I hope this was helpful. And again, if anybody does want to learn about the nakshatras this weekend, it's going to be a great course, and I'm looking forward to showing all of those nakshatra connections to the Rashis, like I just did here with Cancer being those three, and then Leo, Magha, Purva Falguni, Uttar Falguni, and all the way around the zodiac. It's just beautiful to understand how this incredibly elegant system of sidereal zodiac, sidereal astrology, it's called the Nirayana chakra, is really the cosmic structure, the sort of cosmic matrix into which we've incarnated, and how that symmetry is just beautiful when you start to really, especially break down those connections to the Rashis and the nakshatra portions, and then show some real special ninja tricks on how to not just get overwhelmed by all the nakshatras. There are 27 of them. How do you keep them straight? How do you remember? What are, but ways to really organize the information well. So if that's interesting to you, you got a couple hours, less than that now, to go ahead and register if you're watching this in real time. And you all have a good weekend. Oh, and I see my great student Amy thanking me for all I do. You're welcome, Amy, and it's for people like you that I do it. Aisha, thank you, Sam. Great video. You're welcome. Thank you for your attendance, and may we all be kind and loving to each other. And that includes, as my friend Amy would say, loving the animals, being kind. I hope that if there's one thing that we're all learning through this COVID time, I've seen the changes, and I think they're going to be even more and more, is a cruelty-free life as much as possible, especially as it relates to not eating and killing animals senselessly. This was the first thing that I said immediately was a big part of what is going on with this COVID, aside from getting back all, more of our time. So we're not going to these jobs and learning how to work remotely and reclaim and recapture a lot of our time. Most of it is also about our lording over animals who have done nothing to us just for food and profit. And my friend Amy Eager is also very much a vegan lifestyle advocate, as am I. And so again, this is one of the biggest, if not the biggest issue that faces humanity as far as I'm concerned. If we stop treating animals this way, so much of the world would just simply, not just would it improve, but our health would improve, our immunity would improve. We would stop releasing so much into the ozone, so many things would improve. Not to mention, obviously, there would be billions of animals that wouldn't be tortured and systematically slaughtered every year. It's terrible. So again, this is a time, this relationship that we have to cancer and to, if not children, but being a mother and a father and a patron and a sovereign over all of the creatures of the earth. And yes, a lot of that includes the choice of what is on your plate every day. So I hope greater compassion comes into the world in all its forms. One of the ways it can come into all of our lives without much effort at all is to just eat, at least not eat dead animals if you can help it, which I think most people can if they really put forth even a minimal effort. So I'll leave that. Amy said, was that a crow in the background? Yeah, I have a lot of crows right outside my door. And oh yeah, animals are here to teach us unconditional love. Very true. That's definitely animals and children. I often compare children to animals. They're kind of like animals. When I talk about pets and children, because children, when we care for them when they're a child, when they're young, but then at some point they don't need us to care for them. That's selfless nurturing. But animals always do. They teach us unconditional love because they have it, but then we also have it for them. When we're caring for a dog or caring for an animal, they can poop on the floor, they can do whatever they want, and we still love them because our nature is to love. Our nature is to love, to want to care for something. So caring for something and loving something and feeding something benefits us. Of course, it benefits them too, but because that's our nature. And all of this is very much Cancer stuff. I always recommend my Cancer clients have a pet because they'll take all the selfless love you can give them. They don't mind. Maybe your adult child doesn't want all of that so much anymore. They want a little more boundary. The dog, give them all the love you got. They'll take it. But thank you all for the I'm happy to take this little diversion before we end, because that's also my big cause. Ojana says it's easy to find stillness in animals. Absolutely. You know, animals, I remember the guru Rajneesh used to talk a lot about animals. He later became Osho, and he used to always talk about how animals are always in meditation. Like humans, we're always so restless, but even just getting around an animals are always at peace. Now their peace is different because they don't have the free will, but you see a cat, it's always meditating, it's always present, it's always 100% and complete in everything it does. Even if it's ripping apart a bird, it does it with no guilt, no shame. It's just 100% totally present. And that's the beauty and the purity that we see with animals. And it's the beauty and purity that we see with children as well. It's the same kind of thing. That's why I kind of compare them, because there's an innocence, there's a completeness. You know, with human beings, we're always fragmented. Our identity and consciousness is fragmented because we have an ego that's in the way, that's always filtering everything. But animals don't. They look at you with 100% there. If you scare them, they're 100% scared, and then they're 100% calm, and then they're 100% whatever. They're mainly 100% present. They're present. And there's a beauty to that presence. And we're never present. We're always in our mind somewhere about something. So our path is to transcend and navigate that, to navigate that ego. And that's actually why we've descended into this world of karma, is to navigate through that ego back to innocence. Someone said, do I have a pet? I don't, because in my condo it's a little complicated, but I am in the process of probably going to be getting a cat. I like having cats as pets. I love all animals. I mean, I love dogs. I like cats as pets though. Mainly because I go out a lot, and we know I love dogs. I love all animals, but the dog, always knowing that the dog is so upset because I would leave, or the dog always wanting to be there. It's a little different. I like having cats as pets, though. I had a cat for about 10 years, and but so the yeah, so it's Aisha says, yeah, I observe my cat. I can see the teacher and her cats just flow with the tide of nature, most beautiful way. Yeah. All animals, dogs too, all of them. They're just they're much more connected to the heart than we are. They love us in ways that we don't love that fully. I mean, we do, we love with more complexity and with, an equal amount of passion. It's just different. But that's the thing we really learn from animals for sure. And we need to stop looking at cows and pigs and ducks and chickens and fish and other things as just food and things we eat, or bats or pangolins or whatever it would be. I don't know how you can look into the eyes of an animal and just not see the soul in that. I don't care what kind of animal it is. So we need to awaken greater compassion. Imagine if everyone in the world had that compassion. It's not impossible. Especially something like meat eating. This is what I said when COVID first started. I said one of the greatest benefits of it is that mainly for health reasons, many people will probably stop eating as much meat, or maybe meat altogether, mainly for health reasons. And again, once all that toxicity clears your body as well, you start feeling lighter and cleaner. But even just starting to make that choice, you'll start to question, why did you eat something that arrives in plastic and ground up in this kind of red texture, and stop seeing that as a living being that was hung upside down with its throat slit, crying for its life, bleeding out, like it had, like, just questioning that. We're not barbarians anymore. We don't need to do that. And so a great benefit, I think, my estimates was that I hope that COVID could even reducing meat eating by 10 to 15%, maybe, which is, I think, realistic, if not even a little conservative. And that could start a wave. Look, I remember I grew up where everybody smoked. I mean, like smoking cigarettes. Now, hardly no one does. But even if you would have said when I was, 23 years old or something, that one day everybody's going to wake up to how bad smoking is. Everybody knew it was bad, but people just kept doing it all the time. Yes, I know now there's vaping and all, but again, no one would have thought that people would just kind of not smoke that much anymore. But it changes. Things can change immediately. So one of the best things human beings could ever do is stop eating so much meat. And it's nothing but a supply and demand. And every person is in control of that. If every human being stopped eating meat, there would be no more slaughter of animals. I guarantee you. And in fact, as soon as people stop doing it, you would see all these businesses transition and they're already doing it with non-GMO, and businesses will adapt to what people are doing. If people stopped eating it, the thing would stop happening. It's completely in the power of people. So anyway, you all got me talking about one of my big causes, and I'm happy to do it. And yes, these plant-based meats, this Beyond Burgers and stuff. I mean, some of that stuff tastes good. I try because I want to see how it tastes. I mean, tastes good to me. I mean, especially since it's healthier than artery clogging, cholesterol laden, chemically induced meat. So Amy says, think of what it would do to the healthcare crisis. Yeah, of course. Well, but that's part of it too, is the meat eating industry and the pharmaceutical industry. Again, they're not separate. Again, people talk about these weird conspiracies. They talk about like, oh, it's, QAnon and this and that and Gates, and people get so fired up about all these things that might happen one day. What about what's happening already? Again, that's why I don't want to get off on all that stuff, but you don't think there's a conspiracy right in front of you, and it revolves around one thing, and it's money. You don't think that the government subsidizing agribusiness, pharmaceuticals, health industry, these are the three biggest businesses in the world, everywhere, and they all are in bed with each other and supported by all of the governments, companies, lobbyists, Congress people. There's the conspiracy, and it's right in front of you. You don't need to have some weird QAnon or some other kind of thing, Gates microchipping us. We're already, even if we're not microchipped, we're already on the conveyor belt. Look around you. Take the blinders off. You're already on the conveyor belt. You've been on it forever. Eating meat, getting sick, going to the doctor to give you pills, to give you more food. You go to the hospital because you're sick, and the food they feed you would kill you in the freaking hospital. You can't get healthy food in a hospital. So anyway, we'll end it there before I start making everybody mad. No, that's never stopped me. But this is again, everybody's so woke. And nobody's talking about this. This is the thing. If you're so woke, how about start with what we already see that's already tangling up all of our money, all of our health, killing and polluting the entire world. Not to mention oil. That's the other big business. Oil, agribusiness, health industry, food, all of it. This is the big sort of conglomerate. And of course, weapons, it's like 4 or 5 things that are all where all the money goes, all the influence goes. But the biggest business now is pharmaceuticals and the health industry. Of course, making sure we're sick all the time. It's not a health industry. It's a managed care industry. So we make sure to keep people sick as well. Go to the doctor so we know what pill to give you. Keep eating this terrible food. The doctor doesn't tell you to stop eating hamburgers. He says, oh no, keep doing what you're doing and take these pills. Okay. All right, folks. So now is the time to really, as I say, connect with the heart. This is the crazy world we're in. We can all find that which is more compassionate. And in those choices that we have every day, the most compassionate things we can do are things that are totally within our grasp. And may we all do them and be kind and loving to each other.